Rudin, like many of us, had many occupations. And there was an occasion when he was employed as a school teacher. One day he was walking down the road when he found a piece of chalk in his pocket. And being the mullah, he couldn't help himself. He stopped to write some spiritual graffiti on a wall when he was nabbed by the police and hauled off to court. Now his behavior in the court was so irrational. Instead of sending him to the jail, they sent him off to the insane asylum, where Mullah Nasruddin found himself in a courtyard surrounded by lunatics who poked and prodded him and teased him and harassed him until he took the piece of chalk out of his pocket and he said, "Stand back!" They all stood back, and the mullah drew a line on the concrete and he said, "First one under the line wins." Mullah Nasruddin was released, and the authorities are still scratching their heads as to whether it was his ingenuity or the horrific injuries that were sustained by the lunatics as they tried to get under the line. Well, the moral of the story is what gets you into trouble can get you out of trouble too. So what does the piece of chalk represent to us? There's a story about an old man who had come to the end of his life. He'd been a good man, a fair man, following the faith of the time, doing good works. He was what we would call a good man. So as he was taking his last breaths, he called his 3 sons to him, and he said to them, "I have taught you the ways of doing hard work, having faith, and never doing things in haste or anger. Follow that which I have and your mother and I have taught you, and keep vigil over my herb garden day and night, so that no robbers come in." Well, he passed away peacefully, and his sons were vigilant and diligent in keeping his word. Each night one of them would keep guard over the herb garden. After some while, one night when the eldest son was keeping his watch, an old man came and appeared before him and said, "I am the prophet Elijah, and because of your vigilance in keeping your father's words, I can give you one of 3 boons. You can become rich, you can have knowledge, or you can have a good wife." Now the first son, without a moment's hesitation, said, "I want to be rich. I want to be the richest man in the world." So the prophet Elijah took out of his pocket a gold coin and handed it to the son and said, "This will make you rich." Now the next night, when the second son was keeping his vigil again, The prophet Elijah appeared before him and, saying the same thing, offered him either wealth, knowledge, or a good wife. And the second son said, I want to be the wisest man in all the earth. I want knowledge. And so the prophet Elijah took out from under his cloak a book and handed it to the second son and said, this will bring you knowledge. And so the third night, when the third son came out to keep his watch, the prophet Elijah again came, offering him the boon of one of three. And the third son said, a good wife is greater than wealth or knowledge. I choose a good wife. So the prophet Elijah said, come with me, we must take a voyage. And so he led the young man, and after a long day they found themselves at an inn. Now, of course, the prophet Elijah, being who he is, knew the language of the animals and the birds. And as he listened, he heard the animals of that place saying, oh, it is hoped that this young man does not marry the daughter of this innkeeper because he's cruel and greedy. So, of course, the prophet Elijah said to the third son, come, this is not the place for us. And so they moved on. And after another day's traveling, they came to another inn. And again, the prophet Elijah, listening to the animals of that place and the birds in the trees, who gossiping, as animals and birds tend to do, was saying also, oh, it is hoped that this young man does not take the daughter of this innkeeper for his bride because she is vain and demanding and so forth and so on. And the prophet Elijah said, well, this is not the place for us, come. So they went on to the third inn, and there, listening, the birds and the animals were saying, oh, did you know that there's a handsome young man just arrived and he would be just the best husband for the daughter of our innkeeper because he's so kind and she's beautiful and she's also very kind and caring. So, of course, Prophet Elijah approached the innkeeper and sought his daughter's hand for the young man. And the innkeeper said, well, if my daughter agrees to this marriage, she is welcome to be wed to this young man. Well, of course, as young women are, she'd peeked around the doors when the young man had entered the inn, and he, being a very personable and handsome young fellow, with a demeanor that was indicative of kindness, etc., etc., she had fallen in love with him. And so the marriage was agreed, and the prophet Elijah married them on the spot. So the young man, after a time, went with his young bride back to the family house, where he found it deserted. His eldest brother had built himself a rich palatial residence and moved out. And the second son was traveling the world, sprouting knowledge. So the third son with his bride took up residence and began to care for the herb garden, which they tended with love. And they were able to live comfortably as their children were brought into the world. But one day, the prophet Elijah decided to check on these 3 men. And in disguise as an old beggar, he went to the house of the first son. The servants, seeing this bedraggled old man, wanted to send him away. And the prophet Elijah, shouting in a loud voice, said, "I have come to reclaim the gift that had been given." Now the eldest son heard this voice and recognized it immediately as that of the prophet Elijah, and he came down to beg, "Please, please don't take away my coin." And of course, Prophet Elijah berated him, scolded him roundly, and said, "You are not worthy of this gift because your heart is filled with greed. It lacks charity," and so forth. So the coin was returned to the prophet Elijah. Presenting himself to the second son, the prophet Elijah, in the disguise of a young student, sat in the assembly of the second son as he was sprouting knowledge, and after the dissertation went up and asked a question. And the second son, looking him up and down, said, "I don't answer stupid questions from young people like you." And then, in that voice that is clearly recognized, the prophet Elijah said, "I am here to claim back the gift that was given to you. If you do not have the compassion and the wisdom to explain that which you expound, then the gift of the book is not worthy to you." Of course, the second son begged, but in the end he had to return the book to the prophet Elijah. Then the prophet Elijah went to the old house, the family home, where, presenting himself as a needy beggar, the door was opened by the third son's wife, who, seeing this man, hungry, tired, and in need, welcomed him into the warm hearth where the third son and his children sat, and offered hospitality. The prophet Elijah said, "Because you have a good wife, I give you these other gifts, the gift of wealth and the gift of knowledge. You will do well with all 3. And then he left. And of course we know the end of the story. They prospered and gave alms and were kind. And when they passed on the coin and the book to their children. Could be asked, what is the meaning of this story? But instead it's asked, what is the feeling that this story evokes in us? What is the feeling of this story? Always, the feeling comes first and the words come after. What is the feeling of this story?
The most important thing is the heart.
Right. What is it that makes us nod and agree with some deep knowing before even the words come as to why or its meaning or how we understand it? The feeling. Yes, I know this. It's here.